Our speaker tonight shares that similar heart, sharing evidence. Jim Wallace was raised and attended college in Southern California, so we got a California boy here tonight. He's a retired cop, homicide and cold case detective serving the LA County for 25 years, over 25 years. He and his wife Susie have been together for over 30 years, so obviously he's got a good street credibility with his lovely bride. Raised 4 children, I believe 2 naturally, and adopted 2. Their ages are 17 to 26. Jim was a strong atheist for the first 35 years of his life. But he utilized his talents as a cold case detective to evaluate the Gospels and the Christian worldview. To say the least, he has discovered some surprising truths that will stand up even in the court of law. He's been in the course. We've seen him on Dateline NBC. I mentioned this morning at an event with Jim that my wife Jennifer, sometimes in our boring lives, will watch Dateline NBC. And I remember seeing this guy on TV in the last year. And now in the last 3 months, I've seen him 3 times in the Twin Cities. He's inspiring between his perspective from a cold case perspective and then Young in My Christian Journey with Dr. Don Barley from a scientific perspective, sharing the evidence. 2 people that I'm very thankful for to encourage my faith. So let's give a warm FaithSearch International welcome to our guest speaker tonight, J. Warner Wallace.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming to this great event. We've got some important work to do tonight. And although this is fun and we get a chance to eat, and that's always important, right? Food is important. And we get a chance of dessert. That's even more important to me. This is really, I think, an important mission we're on tonight. A challenge I think we are all have to look at seriously. And I was a guy who was raised up in California by atheists. My dad's not a believer even today. And he was a cop before I was a cop. And my son is now a cop now that I'm working with the DA's office on these other cold cases that are still outstanding. As a matter of fact, if you were watching Dateline, we're moving over to Sunday night starting tomorrow. Usually Dateline's on Friday night. And the first episode tomorrow is a case that I did, we closed in October. So you get a chance to see tomorrow night. I think it's at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. I'm not sure when does Dateline even show? I don't even have cable at home. So is it 8 o'clock? Whenever it is, if you watch Dateline tomorrow night, we have a 2-hour episode on a case from 1979. I only work unsolved murders, so these go back quite a number of years. And what I want to do is share with you 3 things I've learned since becoming a Christian that I think have really motivated me to become, number 1, a Christian case maker, and number 2, to support those people who are in this ministry who understand how important and why it's important for us to make a case. And instead of sharing these truths with you by just telling boring stories, I'm going to tell boring stories with props. That's always better, don't you think? Have you noticed all the props they put on the stage here? If you work as a cold case detective, it gives everyone ideas. Every time you go anywhere, I can't tell you how much yellow crime tape I see at events, right? Because every host has got crime tape stretched across the stage, it seems like. So I brought some material here I'm going to share with you. And I want to just illustrate this point. How many of you in this room know somebody from the age of 15 to 30 who has walked away from the church, walked away from their Christian beliefs? Raise your hand. Look around, folks. These are our kids, our grandkids, our nieces, our nephews. All of us have some experience of somebody, and because the reason why you know that, and the reason why you can raise your hand, is because you know what the statistics show. And I don't care who's doing the surveys, if it's Southern Baptist Convention, if it's Lutherans, if it's Methodists, if it's Barna, if it's Gallup, I don't care if it's secular or it's a Christian polling, and you see that 60 to 80% of young people who claim to be Christians in their first year of college will not be Christian. You heard the story from Aaron before we even started here. He was in exactly one of those numbers, right? One of those statistics. Folks in their college years are walking away from the church, and only 1/3, according to Lifeway, will ever return. And by the way, when they return differently. Because when you poll them on the way out, why did you leave? The vast majority will say because they had skepticism about Christian claims. But when you poll them coming back, do you think they finally say, well, you know, while I was gone, I did the work and actually investigated this, and I discovered it was true. That's why I'm back. No, that's not what they say. Why do you think they come back? Because they're having their kids now, and they want to raise them in the same community which they were raised, even though they no longer necessarily believe the claims of that community. And you wonder why our churches are looking more and more like the culture. Because we're inviting folks back into the culture who have left us, but they're now back with us, even though they don't believe what you believe anymore. So we have to address this issue. Are you happy with those numbers? Let's say those numbers are incredibly exaggerated and it's not 60 to 80%. Let's say it's only 20%. Would you be happy with a 20% attrition rate? When you poll the nation and ask them, you know, across the world, there's a Pew poll that came out 3 weeks ago. Globally, Christianity is actually on the rise. But nationally, it's on the decline, dramatically in the North American continent. We are less and less Christian every passing year on this continent. And that's a trend that I don't think you're happy. I'm not happy with it. So let me illustrate a way I think we can, three important concepts. And then how I think that what FaithSearch does actually addresses the three issues. I'm going to start with this vest. Maybe you guys have heard, this is a ballistic vest. You guys ever seen a ballistic vest before? This is a bulletproof vest. We have to wear these. They've changed over the years. They didn't used to be like this. When I first started, they were straight panel vests. Now they're what's called a wraparound vest. Any law enforcement in the room? Raise your hand. Any law enforcement? I can say anything I want then, huh? Because there's not anybody here who can fact check me. This is awesome. Well, I'm about to tell you a bunch of nonsense now. Okay, bulletproof vests. When we first started doing this years ago, we had straight panel vests, okay? Because you could not, well, we just didn't know. And we were trained in a way that made a straight panel vest very dangerous to wear. Let me show you what I mean. A wraparound vest has an L shape. So it can wrap around the side of your vest, side of your body, okay? So this is a little bit different. Now, a straight panel vest does not have that L shape. A straight panel vest has just a straight panel, straight down. So when I would take this Velcro and pull it across, I'd have a gap between the front and back panel. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, that's not, if you think about it, it's not really necessarily a safe kind of a vest to wear. A wraparound vest gives you coverage on the sides. Now, why is that important? Well, when I first started, we did not do basically an isosceles shoot profile. An isosceles shoot profile is a profile where you actually address the aggressor by taking an isosceles triangle position, bent knees, and that you're facing your aggressor. That's fine, but we used to want to try to make our shoot profile a little narrower. That's a pretty wide profile to get hit with bullets, right? So we would take we would turn to our suspect, and we would pull our gun hand over, and we would blade, so we'd have a bladed profile, which made us very narrow to the suspect. But the problem, of course, is if you don't have a wraparound vest, what are you showing your suspect? The one area, and we had guys who get shot in here, and this vest would just keep the round in their body. It wasn't good. So we've changed it now, and we have this kind of a vest, which is safer. These actually have a long front panel and a long back panel you can tuck in your pants. I used to hate that in patrol, so I always cut mine off. So they look a little bit different in reality than these actually look, okay? Now, I'm going to tell you, we know these vests can stop rounds because we actually shoot rounds into the vest. So we have to take the vest off, we put them on a target, we put them at 25 yards, and we shoot rounds of different calibers, 25 to 45 caliber rounds. We actually even have an inserted panel here, which is designed to stop a .223 round. So this panel is actually a little bit thicker, and it actually will stop a .223 round, which is a penetrating round, okay? So it's designed to actually stop a number of, and you can see this when you put it on a range and you shoot rounds at it. Make sense? Now that you know what the vest can do, it just gives you some confidence. I'll tell you what kind of confidence it gives. I had a case, when you work robbery homicide, you're also going to get called out on every officer-involved shooting. Now, I'm here to tell you, we are in a time right now when you know from watching the news that officers have done some pretty stupid things in the last 6 months. And no one is harder on officers than officers. I mean, the last thing we want is to have our good name drugged through the paper, right? Because one or two of us, out of the 785,000 sworn officers in the country, does something they shouldn't do, okay? So keeping that in mind, when I get called out to do an officer-involved shooting as part of a homicide team, I'm called out to make sure that the officer who got involved in that shooting was doing what he was supposed to be doing and had a good reason to get involved in a shooting, and that shooting was legitimate. So I did that for a number of years. One night I get called out on a guy who pulled over a drunk driver. And he gets the drunk driver pulled over, and the guy wouldn't stop at first because he's drunk. And he finally stops and pulls over in a Save-On parking lot. And the officer walked up on the car. I got called out in the middle of the night on this. As soon as the shooting occurs, they call out our team, and we come out from wherever we are, and we walk through the shoot scene with the officer to make sure that he had all the good reasons he's supposed to have to get involved in a shooting. So clearly, if I get called out, the officer's still alive, okay? Because I'm going to do an interview with him. So that night I get called out, and there's bullet holes all over the side of the car, and there's casings everywhere, but the officer's still alive to tell me about it. So we walk through the shoot scene with him. He says, yeah, I pulled this guy over. I walk up on the car. I can smell alcohol coming out of the car. I tell him to come out of the car so I can do an FST. That's a field sobriety test, right? I can say anything I want because there's no cops in here. That's an FST, a field, whatever it is. I can say whatever I want. I can make this whole thing up. That's a Florida sobriety test. He was in Florida. No, yeah, I can say whatever I want. So he gets out of the car, and he's facing me. It's the officer talking. He says, I can see right away this guy's a bad guy. He's a parolee. He's all tatted down. He looks like a guy who just got out of jail. Sure enough, he had just come out of jail about a week prior. And he had under his untucked shirt a .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol in his waistband. The officer didn't know it. So this guy had been out of jail about a week and a half, 2 weeks, and he did not want to go back to jail. In our state, if you get arrested as a felon with a gun, a parolee with a gun, you're going to go back to jail for a year. Another lie I can tell you because you have no idea if that's true or not. But no, that's true. So he didn't want to go back to jail, and he realized he had a gun on him, and sure enough, this guy, seeing who that guy was, decides, I'm going to pat this guy down before I do an FST. So he tells him, do me a favor and turn around, I'm going to pat you down. So now this guy has to make a decision. He's about to get searched by a police officer, and he's got a gun in his waistband. So he decides, rather than get caught with the gun, he'll just turn around and kill the officer. So he's standing about as far from the officer. I'll put this on the stage just to make my point, okay? Let's pretend this is our bad guy. He's standing about, my bad guy's taller than this. So let's say this is our bad guy. The officer's standing about this far from the bad guy, and the bad guy is pointing a gun at him. And it's too far to really kind of get into a grappling match with this guy. So he has to make a decision. So I said, what did you do? He said, well, he beat me to the draw. I mean, he had his gun pointed at me. I didn't have my gun. My hands weren't even near my gun. I said, wow, that's not good. So he said, I just decided, I knew I was wearing my vest. So I just decided to tense up my stomach muscles and take the first couple of rounds until I can get my gun out and return fire. I thought, whoa, that's gutsy, right? And I could say that a number of different ways. That was gutsy. Would you agree? See, before he started that night, he had belief that the vest could stop rounds because he'd seen the vest stop rounds. But that night, he went from belief that to belief in, just like that. Because now he was about to trust the vest to do the very thing that he thought it could do based on what he'd seen in the range. How many of you think our young people have belief in? That kind of belief in. The kind of belief in that is not going to hit the deck, run, jump around, get nervous when it's under attack. But is going to stand there and take the rounds because it knows that this is true. That's the whole thing we don't do as a church, folks. We don't give our kids enough good reason to believe that this can stop rounds. So the first time it's a professor who's attacking their beliefs, are they going to stand tall in something they're not sure can stop rounds? That's what I'm seeing, is that most of my young people, and I was a youth pastor for 5 years, I lost the first year I graduated of seniors, I lost them, all but one. To universities like Berkeley, Sonoma State, all the California universities. This is not a very conservative place, okay, California. And I lost my students. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm the terrible youth pastor. Well, actually, I'm like every other youth pastor because I bet you if our youth pastors would keep track of those who are leaving, they wouldn't like the numbers. They just aren't paying attention to what's happening once they leave their ministry. That's what I think. So in the end, it turns out that belief that is the very thing that gives you belief in. If you have this first, you can do this. Yeah, he survived it, right? He's telling me about it. But I thought to myself, wow, there's a message in there for all of us as Christians. There's another message in this. There's another kind of vest I want to introduce you to. This is a raid vest. Raid vests are slightly different. They've changed over the years, too. This is the one I wore when I was working undercover. I worked undercover for 4 years, and so I would work mostly, I was dressed like you are, T-shirt and shorts. That's the best outfit on the planet. Everyone give them a hand for T-shirt and shorts right there. That is, without a doubt, the best outfit. And I worked that way for 4 years, didn't even cut my hair for 4 years, didn't shave for the last 3 years. I was Duck Dynasty before there was a Duck Dynasty, okay? South Central Los Angeles, 5 of us driving around. I looked like, kind of like you did with longer hair. And I'd have a vest like this over my seat in my car. We were driving Stanzas. It turns out that white or silver Stanzas back in those days were the most popular car on the street. If you looked and saw a white or silver Stanza in your rearview mirror, you wouldn't even pay attention to that guy. So we all drove a 5-man team. We'd follow guys around. At the end of a case, we had to take someone to jail. We would just take our vest off the passenger seat and we'd put it on. And the vests in those days had the bulletproof vest, the ballistic vest was sewn in. So you can kind of see where it goes. There's a Velcro liner. And so this front, the panel, the bulletproof panel will actually go inside this lining. And then on the outside, you can put everything else you need. And it has all these different kind of cool pouches for stuff, right? So back in these days, this is a little bit different. But I used to wear one that had everything in the front that it needed to do the job. And I'm talking about, like, your gun. There was a holster for your gun. Then, of course, this still has magazine pouches. It has a radio pouch for this because your radio comes out here. It's got flashlight pouches, handcuff pouches. It's got everything else. But in those days, it also had my gun, which really is stupid if you think about it. Do you really want all your most expensive critical equipment in the front of your bulletproof vest? So when you get involved in a shooting, you look down at your vest, you're like, oh, dang, everything I need, including how to call backup, has now been shot up. Not good, right? So you learn. So we used to wear these vests whenever we would do a raid or take somebody to jail. So one day we did a search warrant at the end of a long day, and we were all in shorts, but we had these vests in our cars, so we put these vests on, and the idea was to go in and do this search warrant on this drug dealer, and we knew from the informant that the drug dealer would... he'd be sitting on his couch watching TV all day, and the informant says he's got a pistol between the cushions of his couch. So if you get in the house and you see he's sitting on the couch, make sure you have his hands, because that's where he keeps his gun. It's right by his lap. So, okay, fine. So we go in there to do this, and it's a 5-man entry team. We did a lot of SWAT training for years before this, so we know how to do an entry. The first guy in through the door, I asked this question one time, and I think it was in Calgary. I asked this, what do you think you call the first guy through the door? Does anybody lean to law enforcement in here? And one person yelled out of the congregation, sucker. He called the first guy through the door a sucker. I said, no, it's close. It's scout. He's called the scout. And he's usually one of your smaller guys, because his job is to have eyes on the threat, the primary threat. So in this case, it's the guy sitting on the couch. The guy behind the scout, the sucker, is called the backup. And I'm going to have everything in the room to the left of the primary target. So my job is not to get engaged with the primary target. That's the scout's job. My job is to make sure no one pops out of a door, pops up behind a couch. I have to cover his back. I have to back him up and make sure all the threats over here, so this guy can be singularly focused on the primary. Make sense? The guy behind me is going to do the same thing on the other side. The guys in the back, all the way to the rear guard, those guys are really there to make sure nothing comes in behind us. But more importantly, if we get hurt, they're our evac team. They're going to drag us out. So that's how you go into these situations, right? So we get in there that day, we knock the door down, we get in, and sure enough, our guy is sitting on the couch. And the guy who's the scout, who's short of me, his name is Jeff, he starts screaming at him, and he says, hey, let me see your hands, let me see your hands. And the guy's gun out, and our guy is looking at him and going, eh. He's thinking about it. He's giving it some thought. He's not just responding automatically. And I thought, oh, here we go. Now, I'm not supposed to be paying attention to him, because I have this section of the room, so I'm just kind of watching my peripheral vision. But he is not going along with the program. And Jeff's getting like even more, it's all happening in seconds, okay? But Jeff's, you can hear in his voice, there's a sense of urgency. Let me see your hands, let me see your hands. This guy's not moving. He's thinking about what he's going to do. Well, I can see in my peripheral vision that Jeff's jacket, his raid vest, looked just like this, because he had forgotten to pull down his patches. Now, I had my patches pulled down. So when I got up alongside Jeff, the bad guy saw my patches, and he gave up. No big deal. See, I think when we first came in through the door and he couldn't see any patches, he wasn't sure who he was dealing with. Is this a dope rip from the 4 guys down the street who also are slinging dope and they want his dope? Is that what this is? Because if it is, he's thinking about shooting it out with them. But when he realized it was the police, he just gave up. Why does that happen, by the way? Do you know how many times I've been saved by my patches or by my badge? When you're a young officer and you respond to every stupid call at a bar fight and you just run in there all by yourself and you get in there and there's 10 guys who are all, brave on alcohol, standing there, stop fighting for a second and look over at you, and they're all thinking, I can take this guy, right? But they don't even bother. Why? Because they realize if I start messing with that guy, this represents a much larger team that's better equipped, well-funded, just seconds away, can take care of the task. So they don't want to mess with the guy who's got patches. Does that make sense? How many times do you think our young people in the college setting are brave enough to wear their patches? You get into that biology class and you're sitting in that class like my son who's in med school. He first walked into his undergraduate is in microbiology. No, it's in biochemistry. I always say that wrong and he always yells at me. Like I know the difference between these two things. I don't even know what they're just spelled differently as far as I'm concerned. So he's in his first class and he said this instructor basically told everybody, hey, by the way, for those of you who are believers, that stuff stops at the door. We don't do that here. Here we just do science. That's okay with me if you have those beliefs, but they don't come in their classroom. We don't do that here. We just deal with the truth here. How many Christians in that class are going to wear their patches the rest of that quarter, do you think? And why don't they wear their patches? Why don't they want to be identified with our team? I think it's because they don't think our team is deep or well-trained. I've been very proud to wear these patches for all the years that my dad wore them before I did, and then I wear them, and then my son's wearing them, and I'm still a chaplain at that agency. But I have never even gotten rid of my badge. I carry a flat badge everywhere I go. I am very, very proud of my association with this team. I never want it to end. It's not going to end. I think you're like a Marine. And when you're a Marine, you're always a Marine. Once you're a cop, you're always a cop. That's how proud I am of this affiliation. Why aren't our young people that proud of their affiliation with the church? Because they don't think our team is that deep, that well-trained, can respond that quickly. And why don't they think that? Because they've probably gone home to us and asked us the first hard question at the first Christmas break, the first spring break, whenever they had that tough question. And when they asked us, they didn't get a good answer. And when they went to the church, maybe their youth group, and they've asked these questions, they haven't been getting great answers. So for the most part, they don't think their team is all that deep. Why do you think we have organizations like FaithSearch? Why do you think we have that? Because we know there's a need in the church with a big C for people who are passionate, informed, have a strategy and an approach that can come alongside the church and do what the church often doesn't do at all. That's why we have FaithSearch. I'm going to tell you, I'm a skeptic about everybody. I still am. It serves our purpose well as cops. If you walk up on that car like that person just ran through that red light because they're late for dinner, you might not go home tonight. But if you walk up on that car like that guy just did a robbery and that's why he screamed through that red light, you're going to walk up on that car differently. You're going to make that first contact differently, and you're going to go home tonight. So skepticism works for us. This is why if you've dealt with cops, you know they're such jerks, right? They just want to go home. And being a jerk helps you get home. So I can tell you, there's no one more skeptical about these dumb nonprofits in Christianity than me. But I'll do whatever it takes to come out and support FaithSearch. Why? Because this is a nonprofit that's doing the work the church either can't or won't do. Folks, I'm just being honest with you. We have to support FaithSearch. Now, I just want to go one more step with you. I brought, it's hard to fly with it. Every time I fly with this, TSA goes through my luggage, but at least I get it here. These are just training stuff. I don't bring any real guns with me for crying out loud, right? But I still bring, this is called a Sam Brown, and I got to do this little work it's still in its pre-luggage shape here, so give me a second. This is the one I was assigned in 1988. I have never, it's on its last notch, I can tell you that, but I have not gotten a new one. Holy smokes, am I going to fit in this thing? I hope so. Because I refuse to give in Okay, everyone get ready. We just had dinner, okay? That's why it's this bad, all right? Hang on now. Okay, I can do this. I can do this. It's painful. It's painful. I can do it. My son still has this. He wears a Sam Browne that's leather on Sundays because I can't see it is the problem. That's bad when you can't see your belt. Is that a bad sign? Hang on. We'll get it. We'll get it. Remember, this is how many years old? Got it. Whew, I just had to see the first hook. My son still wears his leather on Sundays because he says it's the Lord's Day, so he'll shine his leather for Sunday. But he will not wear his leather on, he wears like a nylon. It's kind of like a more comfortable, lighter, doesn't look as good. You can't polish it, but it's more functional. He wears that during the rest of the week, so he'll wear his leather on Sundays. So his is always shinier than mine. Okay. I want to dispel you before I leave tonight of stupid stuff you see on TV and the movies, okay? Because I'm so frustrated with it. Oh my gosh. So if you see what I'm about to show you, I want you to change the channel or leave the theater. Are you ready? This is a training gun. It's made out of epoxy, so it's just a plastic gun. It still has the real light on it that I use on my gun. It's a model of our Glock 21 is what we use. And the flashlight either is a click-on or it's designed to be used as just a peekaboo light, okay? But the gun is not going to hurt you. Got it? Okay. Now, let me just show you the thing that drives me crazy in movies. Have you ever seen someone in a movie do this? Have you? Every movie, right? How much TV do you see? Okay, we don't do this. All right, so if you see someone doing this, you change the channel, okay? Have you ever seen someone do this? Okay, we don't do this either, okay? So same thing, change the channel. Look, in the end, we have what's called a force continuum. And when we're dealing with people, we start at the bottom. Sometimes your physical presence will get the job done. Sometimes your command voice will get the job done. Sometimes you have to put your hands on somebody to get the job done. Sometimes you got to use a baton to get the job done. Sometimes you got to use a taser to get the job done, or left-handed tasers. And sometimes, God forbid, you're going to have to pull out your gun. The percentage of police contacts each year is in the trillions. The number of officer-involved shooting deaths is less than 100. So the number of police contacts that result in a shooting death are really, really small. But occasionally you're going to have to pull your gun out. Why? Because if I'm only going to pull my gun out if I'm afraid I'm going to get killed, if I don't have my gun out. I don't pull my gun out to say, hey, move your car. Move your car. Make sense? Okay. So if I'm going to pull the gun out, I'm only going to pull the gun out because I need to use the gun. Therefore, I'm only going to point the gun at something I'm willing to destroy. I don't want to destroy the ceiling. Therefore, I'm not going to point the gun at the ceiling. I don't want to shoot my own feet. Therefore, I'm not going to point the gun at the floor. Make sense? Now, I might be at a low ready, but I don't want to have to come all the way from here to the target. I want to come from low ready to the target. That distance is much shorter. Make sense? So if you see someone doing the other stuff, one last thing. There's a point to this madness, believe it or not. I want to show you how people go around corners in movies because it drives me nuts. Let's say this is the end of a wall, okay? This is the end of the wall, and it goes all the way down to the floor. But you can't, this is like we're cheating, okay? And it goes all the way to the ceiling. Over here, you can't see me because I'm behind the wall. Over here, you can see me because I'm in front of the wall. Got it? Okay. There's a big difference between cover and concealment, all right? I can be concealed behind a curtain, but if you shoot the curtain, it's going to hurt because I have no cover behind the curtain. See the difference? Concealment hides you, cover protects you. A cinder block wall is great cover and concealment, but a drywall is just concealment. You can shoot through drywall, and cops get killed all the time through drywall. So let's say this is a cover wall. It's cover. It's a cinder block wall that goes all the way to the ceiling. I can't tell you how many movies I see where the cop in the movie does this, okay? He wants to see over there to see who's over that room. So here's how he does it. Okay, we don't do that. Right? Because why don't we do that? Well, you'll be my suspect for tonight, okay? You tell me when you can see me, I'll tell you when I can see you. Pretend, remember this, you can't see all the way down. Okay, this is a wall. It goes all the way to the ceiling and the floor. All right, so ignore the bottom part of my body. Now you tell me, I'll tell you when I can see you. You tell me when you can see me. Ready? You can see me now? I can't see any part of him yet. Why can he see me but I can't see him? Because I have 4 inches of forehead above my eyeballs. And he's going to get all this forehead before I can get to him. Make sense? And by the way, this is an important 4 inches. So if you're going to shoot at this 4 inches, that's not good for me. Make sense? So that's not how we turn that corner. But I see it in movies all the time. So what we're going to do to turn this corner is we're going to pie the corner. It's a technique we use so I can see you before you can see me now. Again, you have to remember you're kind of only using this piece. So what we do is I don't have to be right up against my cover to use my cover. This is good cover, but you know what? I'm just as covered back here. Heck, I'm just as covered way back here. I'm still covered. So I'm not going to scream up on that corner. I'm going to pie the corner. I want you to imagine a piece of pie where this is the tip of the pie. It comes out on one edge of the slice. There's the turn of the crust, right? And there's another edge of the pie to the point of the pie again. Got it? That's called pieing the corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my gun out, and I'm going to pie this corner until I can see him. And I'm not going to go around this corner like this, because why? My elbow is going to be seen first. I'm also not going to walk around it like some, because that's not going to work, right? Because he's going to see my feet. So I have to do it in a way that doesn't give him any body. It's going to be hard here because you have to imagine that going all the way to the floor. But I'm basically going to turn my feet toward him. I'm going to pull my elbow in. I'm going to blade my body. I'm going to try to use, I'm unfortunately cross-sighted. I sight out of my left eye, but you should, if you're normal, you sight out of your right eye. But I sight out of my left eye. So I'm going to have to come around this corner. And now okay, so if I come around this corner, I already have his arm. Do you have me yet? No. I have your shoulder. I can see if you're armed right now, at least on that left side. Do you have me yet? You have me yet? Okay, you have me then. If you have my arm, you have me. But you see how quick? I've got more of him before he's got any of me. We do that by pieing the corner. Now, wouldn't it be great? At some point, I have to actually enter the room to get the bad guy out. I can't do all my work from behind cover. I wish I could, but if I got to get my hands on him, if he's not armed, he's just back there and he's being a jerk, I got to go in there and get him. Wouldn't it be great to take my cover with me? And we actually have ballistic shields that are on wheels or ballistic shields you can hold. They're okay. Sometimes, though, you have to leave your cover altogether to get the bad guy. Do you know what you do when you leave your cover? Because you don't want to leave cover. You bring your cover with you. You know what your cover is? Your cover is the end of your gun. Because now I've got you. Now, if you make a flinch, I think I'm going to get hurt, I'm going to shoot you first. Because now, sometimes the best defensive tool you have is a properly trained offensive tool. Know when to shoot, know when not to shoot. But this becomes my cover. Does that make sense? Do you realize that we're sending our students to universities without any cover? We don't give them the tools to know how to articulate the case. So do you really think they're going to leave the cover of and they're going to come out with their patches and they're going to stand tall in the midst of this aggression when we haven't given them any offensive tools? We haven't given them a tool and we haven't trained them how to use it. Are you surprised that Christians are shrinking from their faith and then they're just going to walk away at some point? I'm not surprised anymore. I am not surprised. Now look, I will tell you that as an atheist, I mentioned this morning, I have always been skeptical of Christians because they're always asking for money. And as a young atheist, in 1979, I used to watch this show. I said it this morning. There was a televangelist in Los Angeles County. He had a show at 5:30 in the morning. And I used to watch it every day. And my wife would come over and she'd say, "Why are you watching that ridiculous show?" I said, "Well, because this guy's masterful in his approach. 21 minutes into this message, he is going to move from message to money. He's going to ask for money. It's brilliant. The segue, you're not even going to see it coming. Whatever he's talking about, he's going to find a way to ask for money. And these people are going to send it to him. It keeps a lot of atheists out for a long time. So I always knew that I was never going to get involved in fundraisers, where as a Christian, I'm going to ask people for money. There is no way. But here I am. I'm here to ask you because this is, as skeptical as I am, I know a good cause when I see it. I hope you do too. Folks, we have got to do something about this dilemma. Now, you might think to yourself, well, gosh, this organization's been doing the same thing for years and years. Why do they really need us to come alongside them today? Because we're about to start something brand new that I think will have been effective, and all of us are trying to figure out a way to do this with young people. FaithSearch is about to start a program, an Explore the Evidence camp for youth. This July is the first one. 6 days that you'll be able to send students. And it could be more than one camp. It starts with one camp, right? But you know how long, the goal is to do this as often as we possibly can. To bring students for 6 days to not only be able to make the case and see the evidence for Christianity, but to be also in an intimate setting where they can actually talk to people about the case and get their questions answered. Wouldn't you like your high school seniors to have that kind of an experience before they go away to college? We have to do something, folks. Now, they've got a budget here. I've seen their budget. Are you aware of what they're doing and how much money they're collecting to do it? Trust me, you're getting a bang for your buck here. This is a very small staff of a dozen people operating on barely more than, it's ridiculous on what they're operating on. I know the budgets of local ministries. But if you want to do another level with this and you want to do a camp that'll help give students, show them the vest stops rounds, help them understand how deep our team is and how the team is well prepared to answer their questions. And then finally give them a tool they can use so they won't hide behind cover for 4 years. If you want to do that, it's going to take an investment to do it. They're stretched way too thin to do this right now. Number one, you got to produce the curriculum to do this kind of a camp. You want to be able to scholarship students so they can go to this kind of camp. It'd be nice if the people who actually teach at the camp got paid. It's not too much to ask. If you want to bring in a worship team, so you have a worship session at that, that's not going to be free. Look, there's stuff we invest in. I'm in Southern California. I do every kind of board, sport, stupid camp you can do. We do surf camps in the summer. We do wakeboard camps in the spring and snowboarding camps in the winter. If it's got a board, we do it. I did those for years. Do you know how much money we spent on snowboard trips? Really? I'm done with it. I'm done with it. If we're not going to invest in students and show them how this can be meaningful, fun, and actually protect them going forward, we shouldn't be doing it anymore. Now, I'm here to tell you that cops see the entire world in two categories, broadly speaking. Sheep and wolves. That's just how we see things. And there's a third category called sheepdogs that stand in the middle between the sheep and the wolves. Now, I'll tell you something right now. Most of the time, sheep don't like sheepdogs. They're a nuisance. They make a lot of noise. They are also canines just like the wolves. They have sharp teeth like the wolves. They make a lot of noise. As a matter of fact, every good sheepdog I've ever known, and all kinds of cops, we consider ourselves to be sheepdogs. There are all kinds of sheepdog ministries for law enforcement, okay? And I can tell you that every cop I knew, every good sheepdog had some wolf in him, just the way this works, okay? But I can tell you that the sheep are irritated by the sheepdogs. They don't even know they need protecting. Most of those sheep in the field have no idea what the danger is. But if we had a field full of sheepdogs, there'd be no wolf problem. We have sheep now in the church, in our youth groups. It's time for us to turn the sheep into sheepdogs. If we can turn the sheep into sheepdogs, we won't have a wolf problem. And this is a way to do it. I'm not here to beg your money for an organization that needs it. They're going to launch a new initiative that will address this problem head on. Are you willing to get on board? Now, I'm going to take a step down from the stage, but I want to pray for us before I do that. Is that okay? Father, you know our hearts, and you know we came to this because we see a need, and we want to meet the need, and we just thank you for what FaithSearch has been able to do so far. And we see your hand in this ministry. Now we're just going to ask how we can play. Father, you know where we're at. Just use us any way you can use us. And continue to protect what this ministry does. We love you. We want to see the work of your Spirit in this ministry, and we're willing to do whatever it takes to support it. We love you, Father. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.